Do you ever find yourself saying, I'm addicted to food? Or I'm addicted to sugar? Or I can't keep cookies in the house because once I start, I just can't stop. I can't be trusted with certain foods. I'm here to tell you that none of these things are true. You are not addicted to food. You are not addicted to any particular food substance, not addicted to any particular type of food. But I am going to talk today about 5 things that are almost absolutely certainly happening instead of a food addiction. My name is Sheena and I am your eating disorder expert. And if you're interested in learning more about eating disorders, definitely click that subscribe button. I drop new episodes every Wednesday to try to expand awareness on eating disorders and eating disorder recovery. So let's talk a little bit first about what an addiction actually is. An addiction is the extreme desire and urgency to use substances, chemicals, or engage in behaviors that substantially negatively impact a person's life. Now, the biggest way that I can illustrate how food cannot be an addiction is this. Folks will utilize terms like, I am addicted to sugar, or sugar is more addictive than cocaine. So what I will say to them is, I have never seen anyone lose their children, go to jail, or be unable to hold down a job because they're eating sugar. Very much unlike the addiction of cocaine, gambling, other substance use. We need to know about food, and the very basis of why it absolutely cannot be an addiction is that food is the very vitality of our lives. We must consume food every day, multiple times a day, in order to exist. We must consume a variety of foods, including proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, in order for our body to function properly. And when we are not doing this, this is in fact, we are addicted to food. But this is not what is happening. In fact, it is probably exactly the opposite. We are trying to sit here and control every element of the urges that our body experiences in relation to food, and navigate a never-changing and oppressive nature of diet culture, which continually escalates the standards for beauty and how we ought to behave when food is present. All of these things are making it feel like we are addicted to food when in fact we are probably just restricting our food in a way we're either not getting enough or not emotionally satisfied from the foods that we are consuming. So here are 5 things that are probably actually happening that have nothing to do with food addiction or you being out of control with food. The first one, you're on a diet, either mentally or physically. We are either mentally telling ourselves that we should feel guilty about consuming certain foods because our body ought to look a certain way or have a certain shape and size. We might still actually be consuming the foods that we deem bad or unhealthy. Our body mentally is saying these foods are off limits and you are behaving poorly for consuming these foods. While none of these things are true, our body goes into defense mode. And it starts to have a real physical reaction, which often includes delaying digestion and bumping up our hunger drive specifically for that food that we are telling ourselves is off limits and that we are out of control with. It doesn't mean we're actually out of control with food. This just means that we are personally imposing limits on ourselves around the food, and it's going to make us crave that food even more. I like to relate this to the white bear phenomenon. If I tell you, don't think about white bears, what are you going to think about? Probably white bears. So if you are dieting or you're thinking maybe you should be on a diet, that is probably a great precursor for feeling out of control with food. Next thing that might be happening is that you are fasting. This can either be intentional fasting, being a food regimen where you only eat at certain hours of the day, or unintentional fasting, where we're just not preparing meals and snacks regularly throughout the day. Perhaps we don't have time, or perhaps we feel like we need a hunger prescription or a body to feel a certain way before we consume meals. This can lead us feeling out of control when the food is available. So for example, if we often skip breakfast and mid-morning snack, we're likely going to be very hungry by the lunch meal or the dinner meal if we are foregoing food into the evening hours. And this is just normal biology. It doesn't mean that we are addicted to food because we are consuming food rapidly or we feel like we need to eat until we are uncomfortably full at that dinner meal. It just means we haven't consumed enough energy through the day, and therefore our body is going to try to appropriately compensate, well, to keep us alive and thriving. So this is not a food addiction. This is simply body trying to keep us well. Third reason is that you're denying yourself certain foods. If you have a lot of food rules, either mentally that you're following or completely keeping these foods out of your home altogether, it is likely that we're going to crave these foods more. In fact, our body is going to ensure that it is so. It's going to amp up the hunger drive, starting with our salivary amylase, which is the first process in digestion when certain foods are thought about or available, which makes us want to consume more of those foods. Is there a common narrative in your brain that says this is a good food, bad food, unhealthy food, healthy food, or I should only have this in moderation? If so, then you are restricting your food, even if you're not physically restricting your food, and that's going to leave you feeling out of control when these foods are available. It also might leave you feeling out of control even if you're consuming a different food because your body is just not sure that's going to get the adequate nutrition it needs. The third reason that you might be feeling an addiction to food or out of control with food is that you hate your body, you're trying to lose weight, or you're having constant negative thoughts around your body. We can often see this come in the form of body checking. So this might be doing things like frequently weighing, checking your body in the mirror, tugging on your clothes or changing your clothes frequently, or measuring parts of your body by pulling skin or wrapping your fingers around your body parts. The more you do this, the more negative you're actually going to feel about your body, even if it provides momentary satisfaction. And if we're feeling negative about our body, and we feel like we might do something in the future, such as dieting or engaging in some type of rigorous physical activity routine in order to compensate for the way our body looks, then it is very likely that, again, the body is going to psychologically and physically react to that, amping up our hunger drives, particularly for those high-fat, high-calorie foods. The next reason why you might be feeling out of control with food is that you are binge eating. Now, it's very important to distinguish that binge eating is very different than emotional eating or a food craving. Binge eating comes about from food restriction. So anytime that we are trying to restrict our food severely, we are likely going to have a binge eating episode, especially if we do this long term. This is especially prevalent for someone who has experienced an eating disorder or is in eating disorder recovery. And what happens is, consuming large quantities of food in one setting, we are feeling out of control and urgent with the food. We are feeling like we can't stop, even if we are uncomfortably full, and we feel extreme guilt, shame, and anxiety after we are consuming that food. All binge eating comes from some sort of food restriction. So whether that's physically restricting our food or planning to physically restrict our food, this can result in binge eating behavior. If you have binge eating behavior, it is really important that you work with a qualified healthcare provider to help you normalize those meals and snacks to help eradicate some of that binge behavior. Binge eating is a biological process, guys. It is put in place by the body to help keep you safe because at some point your body was not getting the nutrition that it needed. So again, this is not a food addiction. This is your body trying to care for you and keep your body safe. You do not have a food addiction, but if you are feeling out of control with food, it is very important that you seek out a qualified HAES provider to help you normalize those meals and snacks in a safe way that can minimize some of those intrusive thoughts around food in the body. Something I always like to tell my patients is when they use analogies like sugar is just like cocaine, it releases the same dopamine in our brain as we might see on a substance. I tell them this: so do hugs. our body is wired to feel good when it has good experiences, which doesn't mean that sugar is more addictive than cocaine. It means that our body has natural biological needs that are going to elicit feel good endorphins and hormones in our bodies in order to help us feel safe and keep engaging in certain activities. While sugar may produce some of the same feel good neurotransmitters as cocaine, so do hugs. And we wouldn't say we're addicted to hugs. I hope that this information was helpful for you. If so, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing with a friend.